Hello, welcome everybody. I'm David Bell, the Vice Chairman for the Eastern Fraud Forum, and I'm joined today live in the virtual studio with Mr. Dave Jefferies. Good morning, David. How are you?
Good morning, David. Congratulations on such a cool name.
the two Davids.
Yeah, I know. We could have a basis of a Saturday night light entertainment show here, couldn't we?
Do you know what, David, we're going to have a great conversation here this morning. We're going to find out a little bit more about what you do, David, and the things that you get up to. And also at the same time, we're going to learn a little bit more about the Eastern Fraud Forum and how that's helping businesses, organisations, and lots of individuals all around the east of England. But let's kick off, David, with who are you? I mean, you're a board member of the Eastern Fraud Forum, but it goes back a lot further than that. But tell us a little bit about you first, and then we'll explore the journey to date.
Indeed, yeah. As you said, David Jefferies. I run a company called Ad Astral Consulting Limited, which really does similar work to the Eastern Fraud Forum in many ways. My raison d'etre, as it were, is to help small businesses, medium businesses. I've worked in the public sector in counter fraud work, and in the private sector as well for some big corporations and big PLCs over the years. And it always struck me that the big guys have got the resources and the departments and access to things, but the smaller companies are really very vulnerable. And when I found some stats that in terms of the percentage of money that was actually lost by businesses and how much falls to the small and the medium-sized companies, it was it's a bit of a shock. But then when I realized why, I thought there's something needs to be done about this. Now, as you alluded to, I was with the previous incarnation of the Eastern Fraud Forum, which we may talk about later. And I thought something's got to be done. I could bring the 30 plus years experience I've had working with the big guys to help the smaller companies. And that's really what I do, essentially. So I can offer the complete package. Investigations, yes, but hopefully that's further down the line. Most of my work is up front with the awareness training for staff and for company owners. It's with the prevention, the detection, writing the policies, having the response plans in place. The stuff that really stops it happening. Similar to cybercrime, it's better to stop it, because once somebody's hacked into your systems, once somebody's open the door, as it were, the virtual door, it's too late by then. And it's the old adage of prevention and cure, isn't it? Really, it's better to prevent something than to cure it once you've got it. So that's really what I do, I guess. I also work a lot with HR departments to do things like dispute resolutions, conflicts, that type of thing. Because I'm trained in statement analysis and micro expressions and advanced interviewing skills, so I can assist with interviews to help detect where there's perhaps a reluctance to reveal facts, should we say? Everything from downright lying to the reticence in certain situations to be able to say things and be able to spot where there are gaps in by analysing the language people use and watching their expressions, etc. So I think most people have seen those somewhat exaggerated dramas on TV where, the guy says, "You're lying. I can tell you're lying because you looked left and scratched your left ear." I
was going to say, you're a bit like the human lie detector. Is it true that if you look up to the left-hand corner when someone's talking to you, that is a creative brain that's kicking off? And, it proves that you could be making the story up. I mean, I have no experience or knowledge in this apart from the TV dramas, of course.
Yeah, there is some truth in that. It's not an absolute. There are certain absolutes. Micro expressions are absolute across the entire human race. We have a split second when we hear something or we think about something, and our face registers the base emotion, if you like. But when it comes to the eye movement and the body positions and the scratching and the touching and everything, it's important to establish a baseline. So you start the interview by doing the pleasantries. It helps build rapport as well. So you ask them how the journey was, what they're doing, what their name is, have they got any kids, all the sort of stuff that you would normally chat about. That gives you the baseline. And when you're asking a question, it's the answer, and you see what they do. So when you ask the question that you don't necessarily know the answer to, or you do, but you want to find out what they're going to say, you work against that baseline. So if they start talking about when they were a kid and they're looking up left and right, they go, "Yeah, when I was a kid, we used to ride our bikes over the fields and, come home when mum shouted and blah, blah, blah." Then you say, tell me about the insurance claim. Tell me about the time that you had the falling out with your colleague, etc. And they go, yeah, so this happened. You think, okay, yeah, there's a reasonable prospect that they're being honest about that. If they then start doing something else and start relating it, that's coupled in with the language. So when I talk about when I was cycling my bicycle over the fields, I'm talking in the past tense. I'm sort of using language that relates to that. Then switch it to something else. And for instance, if I start talking about in the present tense, that tells me that their mind is in the room now. So they're more likely to be creating than they are recalling, that sort of thing. The use of pronouns. There's a great one when you think somebody's been seeing someone that they shouldn't have been seeing, either for some collusion going on or something nefarious. And you ask them what they did at the weekend or what they did last week, and they say, well, I went to the office, I did this, I did that, I went home. And then all of a sudden they drop the pronoun and start talking about had dinner, went to the hotel room, went to bed, watched TV. They've suddenly dropped the pronoun I. So why have they done that? Because they're no longer an I. They're now a we, but they don't want to tell you they're a we because they don't want you to know they were with someone. So you think, well, that gives you an indication that that's when you need to. So when they drop the pronoun, that's when you need to probe, and that's where you need to direct your questions at what happened then, because that's likely to be when the thing happened, when they met the person they were not supposed to meet, or when they did. It's one example, and it's a very graphic example. It's not always as obvious as that, but that's a couple of examples. So, tenses, that type of thing. The difference between this and that, this gun and that gun. You think, what's the difference between this gun and that gun? Well, this gun means that there's a closeness to it, there's an attachment. It's like this is here, that is over there. So by choosing that word, we're distancing ourselves. So we can say, well, that's that. What happened when it was that car, not this car, or my car? My car, that car, this car, the vehicle. There are no such things as synonyms in statement analysis. So you know that something's changed. Could be for instance, it could be congruent. So if I was to say I went out in my car yesterday and I drove down the A11 and I turned left and I went into Thetford, I got the shot. When I came out, I couldn't start the thing. So it's now a thing. So I left the vehicle and got the train home. Now it went from my car to the vehicle, and that makes sense because it's no longer of use to me. And I thought, blooming things, or I don't want it. But if it's in a situation where I'm making an insurance claim on a vehicle and it becomes the car, the vehicle, I don't want to talk about my car at that point, because it's at that point that I'm telling fibs about what happened when the tires were stolen or somebody hit my car. It wasn't because I hit it earlier, but when I drove to the car park, I noticed it and I thought, you know what? No CCTV cameras. I'll say someone dinged my motor and get it repaired. So...
This is fascinating stuff. I mean, I can honestly say you'd be absolutely brilliant at a dinner party around the table, because I can just imagine you're sitting there, almost like the Matrix. You're analysing everybody at the table, what they're saying. The couple that's there. You're going, I don't think he's telling the truth, or I think she's spinning one there. Because do you do that? Because I know in my work. I look around me and see things that I equate to, and I kind of go, oh, you kind of look at your work even in your personal life. Do you do that? I'm not saying at a dinner table, but do you sit there and analyse people maybe when you're out having dinner in a restaurant or something like that? Or do you leave it all at home?
Well, yeah, I mean, you turn it on and off. It's not like, it's a bit like Clark Kent and his glasses, isn't it? He takes them off and he's Superman. He's got X-ray vision. He puts them on. He hasn't. I would be lying, ironically, if I said I've never done it. I don't do it when I'm out with friends and things like that, because that would be totally wrong. I like having friends.
And you have to say that because they could be watching this.
Yes,
so we don't
indeed.
want them to kind of allude that that's what you do.
But it's funny, if I'm out with business partners and we're at lunch or something, and we'll be sitting there and there'll be someone at the next table, and my business partner's very into this as well, and he's I'm doing a bit of sort of coaching with them on it, and they're doing some training. But I'll sit there and they might say, that looks a very strained relationship, or, oh, did you notice that they said they like something, but their face said that they don't, it showed disgust or contempt or whatever with the mouth movements. So yes, in the right place, you do And where some people are very obvious, sometimes you just can't help it. It's like I liken it to being a doctor, a medical doctor, that you're sitting there and somebody sits down at the dinner party and you look at it, the colour of his face, that guy's going to have a heart attack in the next 5 years. You just do that diagnosis automatically. But you wouldn't sit there and say, I think you'll need to call an ambulance. Well, you might do actually, if it was imminent, but you wouldn't. Perhaps you might sort of say to them, if it was appropriate and it was someone you knew well enough to do that, you might suggest they go and have a checkup or something. But but you don't walk around sort of looking at everyone. But having said that, you have to practice it. So sometimes when you're out in public, I find myself on a bus listening and watching carefully. I'm not staring at someone's face. They're just noticing things. But don't worry. If we ever go to dinner, David, I'm not going to be sitting there and say, have you told your wife about the affair? Or
yeah, absolutely. Everything's on the table in the open. It will be the time you turn up anyway. On a serious note, if you're watching this and you happen to be sitting next to the bus or sitting on the bus next to David, just be careful. We might be listening into your conversation and analysing every word that you say. David, let's move on. So, look, a really skilled and experienced background, lots of fantastic knowledge there, which is being put to practice in businesses and organisations, helping them, everything you've spoken about, really helping them as a consultant, rolling those sleeves up, helping them put into place the practices that they're probably failing to do. And in which case, quite a lot of businesses fail to do. Lots of organisations, government agencies, etc., miss a lot of this stuff because they don't have the knowledge, they don't have the experience, they don't have the know-how, maybe the time as well. So something that you can certainly help with. But taking it one step further forwards is why you are also a director and a board member for the Eastern Fraud Forum, which we'll talk a little bit more about now. But you're also one of the founding members, the original chairman for the Eastern Fraud Forum back a decade or so ago. So just give us a little bit of a picture about the Eastern Fraud Forum, where it was, and then we'll talk a little bit more about where it is now, because I can have a bit of input as where we are now and where we're going as well.
Yeah, it was while I was working for a well-known financial services company based in the Norfolk, Norwich area.
That narrows it quite a way down.
It does,
yeah.
Well, they may have done. I'd been working for the government, and I came out of the public sector and was working in West London for a company that was doing some international stuff as a director for corporate investigations there. And it sounds really, I got headhunted basically by them. They were looking for someone, and someone I knew at the time, an Australian guy called Matt, set up a recruitment agency specifically for fraud people. Anyway, got me this job and in that sort of thing. And because it was a PLC, a major international company, they were very switched on to fraud in the sense that it knows no boundaries. So I think it was the Northeast Fraud Forum had first set up with the police and a couple of local companies. And basically, we decided between us, we need one in the East. So we sort of said, is anyone doing it? And as like anything else, no one was doing it. So I thought, well, if no one's doing it, we may as well do it. So we contacted the local police forces, the police services, the fraud units, etc. Got them on board, got some other companies on board, started to sort of spread, network, set up a couple of meetings, set up a board, essentially, created a company. And our first conference was in Cambridge, just outside Cambridge at one of the big business hotel sort of complex near one of the business parks. Got literally hundreds of people there. It was a 2-day event, got some fantastic speakers. The keynote address at the dinner on the first night was Lord Mackenzie of Framwell Gate, who was a retired, I think it was City of London superintendent or thereabouts, who'd gone into politics and obviously been ennobled, who gave a rather fantastic if fruity speech to launch it. Ran the 2 days and it just took off from there, really. I landed as one does. I think somebody said we need a chairman, and someone shouted duck, and I didn't hear the duck. So I ended up as chairman for about six years, I think, altogether. And then when I left the company, the organisation, and the area, I stood down as chairman because I was traveling even more. I stood down slightly before because I was traveling around the world with this company to lecture and present on fraud at the various international offices. So I couldn't really give it the time. So I stood down. Was still a member technically, still on the board, still a director of the original one, and then I really don't know why it sort of faded away, I guess, as things do. I think it really served its purpose, initial purpose, and things had moved and changed on. People had moved from retired and various things, and it sort of filtered away. And then about a year after it really ended, that's when one of the former board members got in touch with me and said they're trying to get the fraud forum up and running again. Would you be interested? By which time I was back in the region, pretty permanently. And I said, yeah, I'll be up for coming along. And thinking, then they might ask me, what did you do before? And thanks very much. Off you go, old man. We'll take it from here. But I very quickly got involved. I think somebody shouted duck again, and I didn't duck.
And your head was above the parapet yet again.
Yeah.
You couldn't keep you away, as it was. You're headhunted again. You're back on the fraud forum as one of the directors and senior board members, and obviously adding lots of value. Now, for those that maybe don't know what the fraud forum is about, do you want to just give a quick overview what the fraud forum is setting out to achieve and how we're trying to support businesses, organizations, and individuals as well?
Yeah. If I was to sum it up in a couple of words, I'd say awareness, I'd say support, I'd say sharing. And I think the key to, I've already mentioned, sort of alluded to this already, that fraudsters know no boundaries. Now, whilst we have a regional fraud forum, and there are several around the country, I think the fraudsters, if you like, literally operate internationally. We've all had that email from the West African minister whose son-in-law was killed in a car crash, and we know the ones. But we operate where we are, and we have to sort of bridge that gap. So we're all running our companies, sitting in our departments, we're doing what we do, and the key to the fraud forums, jury's still out on that one, is that we bring all of that internationalism, that globalism, and make it relevant locally, so that you as a department head in Chelmsford, or a business owner in Cambridge, or a director, non-exec director in Norwich, you've got access to tap into that global awareness, but very much on your very local position, so that you can apply it to yourself. And that's what we need to think about. We read about cybercrime, we read about advanced fee fraud, we read about scams and that sort of thing, and we think, that's not going to happen to me, which goes back to my own company. It will happen to you. It is happening to you if you're not looking for it. So I think the fraud forum for me is something that makes it real for you. So if you join, even if it's as a community member or the free membership one, you've got access to so much that you can tap into. If you join and at the higher levels, then you've got all of the events and things that are happening, that have happened and will be happening, that you can attend to. And it gives you that awareness, that knowledge. It gives you the tools to help fight it. And that's the key for me. That's what it's all. What it was originally, and I believe that's what it still is. It's about making people aware of everything and sharing that knowledge, bringing everything together, from the public, the private, law enforcement, local government, central government. As I say, the smallest one-man band right the way up to the PLCs and the multinationals.
Yeah, and we have a fantastic board. We have a fantastic seed membership as well, those that come together to kick it off and get it up and running. As you say, we're connected with all the relevant police enforcement agencies, all those relevant government agencies that need to feed into this. We have members which are one-man bands running their business from home, through to larger size corporates and organizations. And I think this is really important because it is about a knowledge gateway. You've mentioned it's a sharing. If we share these stories and what's happening in our community, and I use the word community being the east of England, but of course, as you said earlier, David, these fraud forums go beyond that. There's also a national fraud forum as well that kind of sits above, a bit of an umbrella, and everything else sits underneath it, that gives us that local regional support as well. And I think that's so powerful because there's so many things happening in fraud. Fraud can be as simple as I remember the days getting a phone call saying, would you like to advertise on a wall poster and put your advert on there? That was in a simple 60 or 70 pounds or whatever it was. And of course, you signed a contract, and actually they made one wall poster, which you got sent, but it was fraud in its very basic capacity. But fraud obviously now goes into cases are into the billions in some cases. But I suppose what we're really looking at is how it affects everybody. How it can affect an individual's business, an individual's livelihood, the impact of employees. It's a huge thing. And cyber fits very neatly into that as well, because some people say, well, fraud and cyber, they are separate. Well, they are in their way, but they're so integrated now because so much fraud is done through, electronically, through the internet, through emails that you mentioned about, we're getting quite good at spotting fraud in its, obvious place now, where we get the email from Africa or something like that telling me I've got $10 billion to collect and all I've got to do is give my credit card details. They're becoming easier to spot. But I'll give you a scenario. I had a message sent to me yesterday, and it was from so-called the government. And it was pretty well done. It would look really good. And it was asking the question saying, to claim your £400 deduction in your energy costs this year for the winter, all you need to do is click on this link and feed back this information. And it wanted name, address. And this is where the rest of it looked really good. The quality of it was very good. Then it said your credit or debit card number to refund your money to. And that was the being it stood out. So I went back to him and said, look, don't do it. This is very obvious when you actually do pay attention, but we're all very busy. It's one of the big things. We're all busy. We don't spot these simple things that can make a big difference. And I like to think what we're doing at the Fraud Forum, certainly in the Eastern region and beyond, is that we are that wealth of information, that wealth of knowledge, that community that helps connect all the dots together. And we're just providing that opportunity, as you said, David, as a free platform so people can join, no cost whatsoever. They can come on board and sign up and just get the mailings and join our mailing list and notifications of what's happening. They want to go one stage further. They can sign up in their capacity of their business or as their individual for a whole £77 per year. That gets them into their premium membership. And then there's opportunity to come to breakfast meetings, obviously access various webinars, seminars, and all the other great content we put together in the vault as well, which we're gradually building. So for me, it's a fantastic opportunity for those that want to maybe be a bit more alert and ready, because that day will come. I think we're all open and vulnerable.
Yeah, absolutely. I think you're right. I think everyone's. It's quite good actually in a way for us as the cybercrime issue that people are switched on to that sort of thing. And you're right, they are connected, but they are separate. I always say my saying is that the fraud is facilitated by computers, but committed by humans. So the cyber bit is important, but it's like trying to combat post office armed robberies by concentrating on the cars and the getaway drivers. You still need robbers to rob the bank, and I think what we need to do, and this is something that the Fraud Forum is very good at, this is something my company focuses on, it's the people behind the fraud. If we look at what's happening, not how it's happening, we can spot the fraud better. If you get an invoice to come in, and it's a fraudulent invoice, etc., somebody still has to press the button in your system to make that payment. Somebody has to input something. They don't automatically come. The computer doesn't suddenly say, I'm going to raise an invoice and send it to this computer, and this computer says, but there are people involved. So we concentrate on the story, which is why we're good at spotting African princes and with 6 million in their spare room. We know that now. We understand the story behind it, the thought process behind it. That's the human element. It's still there in all the cybercrime. So yes, have your firewalls, have your processes in, have your double checks, have your cross-reference to bank accounts, etc. But never ever stop and think about what's going on from a human point of view, because that's where we will really defeat this. Because if you rely on systems, you rely on things, and you say, it's fine, I'm not going to get done, I've got a firewall, I'm not going to get done, I've got a process in place to do that. Never ever rely totally on that. Think about what's going on behind it. That's and I think the Fraud Forum is really good at getting that underlying understanding of fraud across.
Yeah, because the weakness, the vulnerability is not necessarily in the systems. You can have the best IT systems in the world, and let's be honest, anything can be reversed engineered and broken and hacked anyway. So you can do the best, you can put the gatekeepers in place, but the vulnerability, the weakness tends to be with the people, because maybe they don't have the knowledge, the experience, they haven't been given the training, they're not aware of the process that's in-house, and it's the person.
If there is one.
If there is one, yeah, absolutely, because obviously that is what you go in and do. And it's those individuals that tend to be the whole, the flaw, which needs to be kind of educated. And again, through the Eastern Fraud Forum, that's what we're doing. We're kind of sharing those stories, and people are going, yeah, we do that. Maybe we need to look at how we can fix or repair or put into place the right procedure or system or whatever that's going to be. So I think it's really important. And I think what's really important about the Fraud Forum, we're all in it together. We are volunteers, making this happen. We encourage, if you want to be a volunteer, we'd love you to come on and be supportive and help us. More the merrier. So if you've got stories you want to share, or maybe jump in the virtual studio and join us for an interview and tell us about how fraud has impacted your business or organization, the losses, how you combated it, the stress that comes with it. Stories are a great way, as you've just said, David, of getting that communication across and really ramping up that awareness for people to be aware of. David, we're getting very short on time. This has been fantastic. I mean, we could go on for another half an hour. I know we could, but I want to kind of come to a conclusion, really. Firstly, from obviously your own business side, if anyone's looking for the service that you offer, they can reach out. So how can they reach out to David? What's the best way of getting in touch with you? Would it be via LinkedIn, via a website, pinging you an email? How can someone get in touch if they want to have a conversation?
Yeah, LinkedIn's a good one. I've got stories about LinkedIn as well that I could share at some point. And if you send an email to me at dr.jefferies@adastralconsulting.co.uk, there is a website, the same one. It's currently being revamped totally because I'm having a new website developed. But if you go there, the contact details are on there as well. Or you can contact me via the Fraud Forum. So while you're joining the Fraud Forum, just drop them a note and say, can you pass me David's details? And I'm more than happy to help.
There you go. And David is one for a coffee and a conversation, or a virtual coffee and conversation. So if you want to have a chat with him, glean his experience and knowledge, maybe for a very small amount of time, and he will be more than willing to give you some guidance. If you are interested in joining the Fraud Forum, you can do that by visiting the Fraud Forum website, easternfraudforum.com, or you can use the .co.uk address as well. Do reach out on social media, connect with us on the social media channels, keep an eye on what's happening in the region and beyond as well. David, it's been fantastic having you here, sharing some of your knowledge and experience and stories. Do remember, people, keep an eye. If David's on the bus sitting next to you, be very careful what you talk about. David, until next time, thank you very much for joining me here in the studio today.
Thank you. See you at the dinner party.
See you then. Bye-bye.
Cheers. Bye.